I don't know how long I'll be on here, but I figured, you know what, I'll just go live tonight and see what happens. It's Tuesday night, it's just after 8 o'clock where I am, and, which is not prime time at all, nowhere near. It's kind of interesting because most of my videos actually get watched around noon, which is quite surprising, considering, that majority of the people that watch my channel as well are between the ages of uh, 30 to about 40, which it does surprise me actually, the age group, because you'd expect it to be younger people, but it's not. So that's a little interesting, just from my analytics and stuff like that I look at. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, I am sick. It's just a cold, but they always really kick my ass because I rarely get sick. And like this one, it's not too bad. Like I can still function, but not very well. Because something that happens when I get sick, because I have low energy levels to begin with. I have basically zero energy to do anything right now. Like earlier, I was gonna cook myself food, and I was just like, I don't even have the energy to do that. So my dad gave me his debit card, and I went to go get food that way. But um, coming back, like I was just breathing really heavy and just very sore, and it's just one of these things. It's so dumb because I barely did anything. I drove to McDonald's, grabbed food there, drove back, and I was wiped out. So that's kind of hampered some progress on what I have been working on for the past few days, which is my car has a center console in it now. It's nowhere near perfect, and it won't be perfect even when I'm done with it, to be honest, I don't think. But it definitely looks a hell of a lot better in there than it did before. I will take how it looks right now, which and it will get fixed. Once it once I get up to Edmonton next time, which will be second week of March. Um, I do want to borrow Keith's files and file down some of the cuts that I made to make it mm, much straighter, right? Make it a lot nicer. So, yeah, because it's if you don't know, because I've posted a couple of updates and clips and whatever else to TikTok, to Instagram, I believe to here as well. Um, and yeah, so basically, I took a stock Fox body. Um, if my brain will work here, sorry again, being sick really screws with my head. Um, I took a stock Fox body early, so 79 to 86 black center console out of my 83 parts car, and I cut the front of it off because I don't have the proper wiring to set up the computer that's in there, which all that computer does is tells you if your fluid is low for your washer fluid, if your headlights have issues, if your taillights have issues. That's all it really does. That is a low fuel light on there too, and there happens to be a clock. But the clock is absolutely useless because it is an LCD display on those that is not very bright at all from the 80s. So if it's quite bright outside, you're not going to be able to read the clock, period. So there's no point. And hi, Brian. Hi. Uh, if y'all don't know, actually, because Brian just picked up a really cool old Beetle. So it needs a little bit of rust repair, but and he needs seat frames and a few other things for it. But and he's a big VW guy. He always has been. He was the one that was informing me on when I was potentially doing the trade for that Manx style buggy, but that wasn't actually a Manx. It was, I'm trying to remember the brand that was, but they weren't known for making those though. That's fair. Um, like something, and I wish I had the money for it right now too, because come May, actually, Disturbed has announced more tour dates, And they're actually coming to Edmonton on May 10th, I think. Yeah, it's May 10th. So it's like, oh man, and I really want to see them. I've seen them once, and it was absolutely incredible. Although it wasn't a great night due to the kind of crap that I was dealing with at the time, but an amazing concert, and I love who is opening for them. If I can remember the names right now, it's eluding me actually. Who are the names? Yeah, again, sorry, my brain doesn't work hardly at all when I'm sick either. So it's always fun to do a live stream when you're sick. Um, but believe me, like I know about rust repair. At least, I mean, I haven't done it myself, but I am going to be doing that in the future, more than likely. Like unless if my convertible sells, I don't think she will, and then I'll just do the repairs myself and go from there. Because I need to get a good amount of money out of that car for it to be worth my while. So yeah, there's that. I don't want to sell the car, but I don't really have much of a choice. It's been for sale for well over a month now, and we'll see what happens. Cool. Very cool. That is awesome. You know? Yeah, I mean EMPI, I'm trying to even think like I'm gonna assume that's like for uh again, sorry, just my brain. You know my issues with my head. But then also when I'm sick, it gets even worse. So it's been really fun like playing Call of Duty lately, or just for the past because this started last night and then it's carried into today, and I haven't been doing near as well playing the game or anything. So pronounced Emper. Well, why is it EMPI? MP. But it's MPI. Uh, Confusion. Much confusion. uh, yeah. But, yeah, so is that just like data plates and all that stuff for the car or something like that? For that Beetle? Or I am. Sorry, I'm just not thinking. All good. All good. Oh. And like something that I'll have because what's kind of nice actually. So not every week, but every other week, for sure. I'm gonna be on, of course, Novotaz's channel. With his live streams for the most part. I mean, there might be some weeks that I miss, but and I'll actually have a new setup because my dad bought a new laptop and he's not gonna take it with him up north. So it's just like sweet. So I get to use his laptop when he's not here, and I'll use that for future purposes live streams. Like right now I just wanted to set up the phone and just do it this way, but in the future I'll use the computer too. So it's a decent little laptop actually. Like I can't run much for games on it, but it works. Like it's got like 16 gigs of RAM. It's an i5 at only 230 gigahertz, but it does the trick. So it's so funny because like I downloaded Warzone 2 onto it just to see how it would go. And yeah, it won't even hold up at all. So I need to just uninstall that off the computer. But there's plenty of other free games on the Steam store, so we shall see what I can find that way too. But yeah, no, because we'll see if I'm able to get the money together though to go to get tickets for Disturbed because I really really want to. Favorite band of all time, to be honest. They really are. I love their music, and they got me through many tough times in my life because all of their songs are about something. They're not just random songs. There's always a certain emotion to their music as well. Like you listen to, for example, one of the best songs for that is "Sound of Silence." they took what is kind of I wouldn't say necessarily an upbeat song, but um, by Simon and Garfunkel, and created this awesome song, that is like David Draymond, who is the singer for them, poured his heart into that rendition, and it's just absolutely incredible. I heard it live a few years ago, and just, oh, God, amazing, amazing. His voice is just incredible. Yep. But, didn't mean to do that. There we go. That'll work. That'll do, donkey. That'll do. It's one of the very rare times that my hair's been, like, super clean, too, on a live stream. Because usually I've been working on the car or something like that during the day, and it gets dirty, and, you know, um, yeah. It's one of those deals. But, February 17th for that, okay. Sorry, I have the TV on at the same time, so I, like, I am paying attention to the chat, but not that anybody's chatting currently. And because, like, there's stuff that I want to do to the car still. Like, there is kind of a big sort of mod that I want to do next on the car. Although I got to figure out the tail light. Cool, very cool. That'll be neato. And something actually that I'm open to with certain things, because, like, you may have seen there's a video on my channel. It's just a quick little short of a Mercury Capri that has sat for 25 years, starting up for the first time. And you might notice, wait, that's not me talking, which it's not. I wasn't even there. My buddy Keith sent me that clip, and I just asked him, hey, can I post that on my channel? And he's just like, sure. I don't care. So it's like, cool. So it was kind of a funny clip because of his reaction to it starting. Because he was just screwing around with it just to see if the motor was any good. And every single time, those 3.8 V6s always start, even though it's one of the worst engines from Ford to come out of the 80s. There's a reason why, after 1986, they stopped production of the 3.8 V6 in the Mustang. They continued on with it in the Thunderbird. And maybe it's just the Thunderbird. They modified it for use in trucks with the 4.2, and stuff like that. So that's really neat. That way. But it wasn't that great of an engine when it first came out. Later 3.8s, though, when they introduced multi-point fuel injection, they were actually really good engines, to be honest. They did some tweaking internally, and they produced a lot more power, too. Because starting out, they only made, I think it was 120 horsepower out of the box in 1983. By 2004, which was the final year for the 3.8, it made right around, it was about 200 horsepower. So that's quite the increase in power. And much better reliability, too. They didn't have the whole issue of piston rings going, because they were notorious for that. And also overfueling like mine did, right? Now, I will say that the early 3.8s with the carburetor are actually not too bad. The later ones are really bad, though. So, it's one of those deals. And, like, I have, because it's interesting with the car right now, and I think I know what the problem is, because I don't think it's a carburetor issue whatsoever, and it's definitely not a vacuum issue. So, my 81 Mustang, has a Motorcraft 2100 carb, and I couldn't really figure out how to change, like, how to actually properly tune the idle on that thing, to set the idle. Because the regular screw, all that was doing was just increasing the idle. So I'm like, okay. And all the way backed out, it's at like 1100 RPM, give or take, at idle. Now, unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about it. Unless because I think I know what the problem is. Sorry, I meant to mention this. So on Motorcraft carbs, how you actually the screw is for fine adjustment, but how you do the bulk adjustment, there's this rod that you have to bend. Right? Now, there are certain measurements, but to be honest, you can just kind of listen to the engine and figure out where it's going to be. So, because I didn't measure, I just tried to do it, and it didn't change a thing. So my guess, and again, it's just a guess, that my timing being at 15 degrees initial is way too hot for the idle to be turned down so much, at least with that particular carburetor. It's possible that when I go to the Holley carburetor, which I hope to do that soon, like that was one of the next modifications I wanted to do to the car, is get that Holley 500 2-barrel on the car, which basically, the only thing that's stopping me is money to get a rebuild kit and then rebuilding that carburetor. So, see now, it's interesting, because like, you mentioned it, you were on 9 degrees initial. Well, here's the thing. Those Mustangs out of the box with the 200 inline 6 ran 10. From what I heard, they like 15, which my car, like, there's a reason why. I have a very snappy throttle. And it's not just due to the carburetor, it's also due to where I have the timing set. Because if I retard the timing back to, let's say, about 12 or so, it won't be quite as snappy on the throttle. Granted, I should be able to turn down the idle, but it's okay for me if I'm idling a little higher. It also really helps in the wintertime, too, to warm that thing up much quicker. Because if I, had the 650, I'll tell, if you say fuel injection, I will rival that with my carburetor. I'm not kidding. That thing acts like fuel injection, because as soon as you're on it, there's no delay. It just, boom, goes. It's incredible. Yes, it would be better, obviously, if it had, like, a sequential fuel injection system. Because I know you toyed around with that sort of idea, of thinking about it. I'm not putting nitrous on the car. I do want to turbo it, though, but I'm not putting nitrous on it. Because I would definitely blow that motor sky high if I put nitrous through it. I just know that, because they're not designed for it. They respond well to boost, but only up to 10 pounds. Any more than that, and you blow it up. So, that's one of those deals. But yeah, because, like, there's plenty of people that told me I should just put nitrous on it, but I'm going, like, I don't want to. Well, see, it's kind of funny, because on that, plumbing it into the main rail of the intake, it would actually have a dead lean. Like, what you would have to do, if you were going to put nitrous on that engine properly without grenading it, you would have to drill holes for nitrous jets directly into each spot of the intake. And with that, you'd probably want to have either fuel injection for each individual runner for the intake, or you'd want a carburetor for each intake so that it can feed enough gas into it, because otherwise you would just be running lean as hell. And it would just blow up your motor, like, on the first pass. That's the problem with trying to put nitrous on an inline 6 that doesn't have a sequential fuel injection system. Or multiple carburetors, right? And it's just that log-style intake, I don't like the idea of actually doing that, to be honest, on a style like that. If it had a better intake with, like, equal runners and stuff like that, that would be better. Yeah, see, I'm not running nitrous on the car. Just like I'm not gonna put nitrous on the other one either. That one's probably just gonna stay mostly stock if we don't sell it. Like might do some rust repair in the future and fix the top. Maybe throw a set of heads on it and a cam, but that's basically it. I don't want that thing to be like a race car. Not that I wouldn't race it, but you know what I mean. Aussie injection? Now, okay, what is Aussie injection? Unless you're referring to, like, alcohol. Because you did mention beer, which wouldn't be the best catalyst, but, guess it can work, I suppose. Ugh. God, I am tired. Like, legit, I have no energy right now, because love being sick. Not. You can probably hear it in my voice a little bit, that I'm a little nasally. But, it's fine. I'll work through it. But yeah, like, because with my center console thing, because, like, something that I haven't done an update on that in a bit. Because, like, it's all going to be one video. I have some segments filmed. I'm going to delete one segment and reshoot that. Because it's just... I don't like how that came out at all. And usually, like, I leave that sort of stuff in. But for that one, I don't need to add that. I can just sort of redo that whole portion there and show what I did. Post. And then as well, because, like, I also need to find, which there should be... with all of my buddy's parts cars out in Edmonton, he should have a manual shift bezel for me, because the automatic shift bezels, the problem with them is that it hits the shift boot. So it's not a great system that way. So I actually have that off right now, even though when I was cutting, I cut into that and it just shattered basically. So I glued it back together. It's not pretty, but it is back together, but it's not on the car currently. So, yeah, so it's one of those things where, not that my shift boot is mint by any stretch of the imagination, it's not. It's got a little bit of tearing and stuff like that into it. Like, I wish I could find... I have a shift boot for that car that came with my old, the short shifter that I bought and subsequently sold, because its new transmission came with that same short shifter that I had, so it was fantastic. Like, and I love that short shifter in the car, because... the only issue that I have at times is getting it into reverse is can be a little tricky with that shifter, but other than that, it's fantastic. And I've missed the odd shift every now and then, but to be honest, find me anybody that's driven a manual that has never missed a shift. They'd be lying to you. They just would. Even professional race drivers will miss a shift every now and then too. So, yeah. But it's one of these deals though, that, like, that shifter is awesome. And then I have that, so the Hurst white ball 5-speed shifter, I have that on the car, which is just, I love that shift ball, to be honest. It feels better than the stock style that I had on there, and it looks better too. I need to clean it, so, which I'll have to see how I can clean that, probably just with, like, some Goo Gone or something like that, because I got some glue on it, so... Oh, you're so full of crap. Now, Brian saying that's just funny. I'm not gonna lie too, but no, everybody will miss a shift every now and then. And I mean, I'm still getting used to the car though. To be fair, like, yes, I can drive it proficiently. I've driven it quite a bit. It's when I do the spirited driving that I'll miss a shift every now and then, right? But because when I drive it normally, I don't really miss a shift. But like I mentioned, that reverse just sometimes is a little hard to find with that shifter. I noticed that because most, as I'm sure you're aware, most shifters, when you put it into reverse, like on a T5, it's all the way to the side and down. But with that shifter, you can't actually push it all the way to the side and then down. You have to not do quite as much pressure and then down, and it'll go in gear. So it's very weird. See, for me, I just need to drive it a lot more, and like I'll be able to get it much quicker than that, I think, because I get used to stuff fairly quickly. To be honest, better than most people, and I'm proficient with driving that car. Like, the one issue I have with it right now, and it's due to the tires, to be honest, which are just not wide enough in the wintertime for it, which is fine. Obviously, my summer wheels are a lot wider, and I will never have this issue again. Is so when driving the car, and if I dump the clutch, so like rev it up to about $3,000 and dump the clutch, I'll get a bunch of axle hop out of the car until I let off the gas a little bit, or I shift into second. Then it, of course, you're letting off the gas at that point, because I don't power shift the car. I don't, because I don't want to wreck anything, because I can't afford to fix it. So there's that, and I just kind of got the car on the road. So yeah. See, well, it's interesting because it's kind of hard to actually go from fifth to reverse, to be honest. It really is. on that. Maybe with a more sloppy shifter, like a stock style shifter, it might be a little easier. But like with that shifter, and I love it. And to be honest, I do want to build um a gated shift plate for it, which would just be out of wood, more than likely. I just need to get thin enough wood and then to cut it out, and it would just look fantastic, to be honest. And just get the because I just get the template by literally just taking cardboard and cutting the like figuring out where my throws are, measuring that, and then cut it out of the cardboard that way, right? And then go from there. So it'd be really really cool. And I've never seen another Mustang, especially a Fox body, with a gated shifter. And I just think that'd be so cool. And you have that mechanical sound to that. It doesn't make the click that, your awesome, like Ferraris and Lamborghinis with a gated shifter and whatever else makes. But it does have its own distinct sound. You can hear every time I shift in that thing. Compared to some manual transmissions where they don't make a sound, that one does. And I kind of like that. And I think it's due to that shifter, because that shifter does not have any bushings on it whatsoever. There's no rubber. It's just pure steel on steel, which is... I love that. So, yeah. And I think it would just be a cleaner look, too. And I would probably have to end up painting it black, or... Like, if I made it out of wood, I think I'd have to paint it. But if I make it out of metal, which it wouldn't have to be that thick or anything, there you go. See, okay. I will say, actually, the only time I've ever done a 180 in the car was one time. Because it was not on purpose. I have done, like, 180s on purpose, but not at speed. This was, so after the rear end swap, that was when I was coming home after the rear end swap happened. I did not have good enough front brakes, and Keith adjusted my rear brakes to where they should be, to be fair. But along the 27 highway between Sundry and Olds, at night, a deer, jumps out in front of me, so I slam on the brakes, and the car does whee and goes, and it's in the other lane going the other way when I stopped. So yeah, now that was with the automatic transmission, and of course it stalled because it doesn't like to do that. Like it's possible I could adjust the float and it would not do that, but I think for every other application of driving it, it would be absolutely awful if I got the float a little, like, adjusted the float higher. It's designed for daily driving right now, and then spirited driving will be different. But honestly, like, with that thing, adjusting the float is a pain in the ass on those, because you have to take the top of the carburetor off. Compared to, say, a Holley carburetor, which is what I'm going to put on the car, that will be so much easier to, adjust the float and change out jets and all that different stuff, right? You don't have to take the carburetor completely apart. You just take out 4 freaking bolts and it's right there. It's brilliant. Just wish the Motorcraft was like that, because then I wouldn't have to worry about this. But also, I do like the idea of going to the 500 CFM versus I think mine is 320 or 325 CFM, so make a big difference. And for reference, I put it in a little calculator to see what does that equate to if I just decided, hey, I'm going to throw a 4-barrel on that car, which is not worth doing at all, but, just to see. And yeah, it turns out to be about 340 CFM for a 4-barrel, because 2 barrels are measured differently with how they obviously are measured for CFM values. So it's quite nice that way, and 340 is about perfect for that car that way. So yeah, that's why I'm going to do that. Plus, for boosty applications later, it'll be much easier to set the Holley up for boosty applications versus that Motorcraft. And basically, I've told my buddy that, because I'm really trying to, if you remember that 81 Capri that I worked on for him, and then the front brakes basically seized up, Only when you actually use them, because after they cooled off and everything, and you don't use them, you can actually drive that car just fine. You just have to use the handbrake to brake. But I can't believe I drove that thing from Calgary to here. Now, granted, the brakes, not that they were great, but they worked better than that. Oh, that's true. Like, don't get me wrong, and I know that I will not have the ultimate. So when I put that on there, I won't have the ultimate efficiency with that I would have if I just, because bear in mind, I have an adapter plate on top of the intake that goes from a 2 barrel to a 1 barrel, right? So for it to have the most efficiency and gain the most power, I would actually have to machine the intake out and bolt it on there, and then go from there. So, which, it's something that I do want to do, because I know that that'll gain quite a bit of power. Because right now, power from going from the 1 barrel to the 2 barrel is not a ton. Like, it might be 5 horsepower or so, but machine out the intake, it gains right around 15 or 20. So that's quite a good jump in power, right? So and every ounce of efficiency you can get out of those is worth it. And I know whenever I go to a header, and that could have been happening fairly soon, but unfortunately it just didn't work out the way I wanted it to, because a guy that I've actually met, and I gave him my old 1 barrel carburetor, which worked, but it needed a rebuild. But it was a decent carb. I gave that to him because I'm just like, it's a 1 barrel carb, it's not worth anything, so here you go, it's yours. And went from there. Yeah. Oh, I mean, you're not wrong. Like, but I do know, because other people that have done this, and talking with them, because there's this guy in one of the Inline 6 group, his name is Jeff Jones. He does an incredible job. And who is that? Oh, that's the Golf. Wait, what Golf is that? I don't recognize that one. Jeez, I think the kid next door is flipping cars, which, I mean, I don't care. I do the same thing. But because every few weeks I see him in a different car, so yeah, because now he's in a green Golf, so about late '90s, early 2000s. But yeah, because Jeff Jones, he is the go-to guy when it comes to getting the most amount of performance out of these things while still being sort of dailyable. And he will, he will actually, if you send him ahead, he will, put different rockers in it. He'll put different valve springs in it. He will deck the head. He'll port and polish as much as he can. And he'll do the intake, like I mentioned. And when he does that, you gain, he says that you'll gain right around 30 to 45 horsepower, depending on your altitude and stuff like that. So it's quite a big gain. And I know the header, I mean, on those, actually, the only way to properly port and polish them, because I know that he'll mess with the yeah, there you go. Because it's stupid with that intake design, because it is one piece. You can do a bit to that, but you can't. Unfortunately, you actually have to remove the head to actually work on the intake runners. So, but that's what he does, and and everybody goes to him. You can never get it perfect, excluding on the ends. You'd have to drill those out and then weld in new caps on each end of it. But yeah, like to me personally, what I would love to do is just chop that thing off, drill proper holes, and have a proper removable intake on that thing. And, and have it with, like equal runners and stuff like that. And yeah. And see, and the 306, fantastic engine, and yeah, it has a removable intake on it. Um, like, because I've thought about the 306, but the gains I would get from running a 306 is absolutely negligible compared to my setup now. It's, yes, you can make a lot more power with them, don't get me wrong, but it's the overall weight and the size of them, and it's going to screw up how the thing drives, period. So it's one of the reasons why I've just said no to that. I think so much custom fabrication would have to go into doing that as well. Like, the T5 was quite a bit of custom fab, anyways. That would be even worse. And I've already spent the money, like, and because people have asked me, why don't you just go to a 250 inline six then? I'm like, well, because there's actually quite a bit of custom modifications that people don't realize that you have to do a 250. It's not just a simple bolt in and you're ready to go. So the 250 has a taller deck height, and so you do actually deal with having to notch the hood, and you also have to make your own oil pan, because the 250 oil pan is completely different than the 200, and it won't because they are different style sump, and you can't just put a 200 oil pan onto a 250 engine. It just doesn't work. So they're just different enough in that regard. So that's the reason why I don't go to a 250. Plus, I've already spent the money to get the T5 under that 200. Going to a 250 at this point would just be extra money spent that wouldn't gain me that much in the end. Because the internals of that motor, the only thing that's different between a 200 and a 250 in the late stages is, so on the back of the, on the back of the engine, you have the small block Ford pattern, so you can run the 10-inch clutch and 10 or 11-inch, whatever the small block Ford is, with the V8 starter. It's fantastic that way. So you do have a little more contact patch there, yes. Power-wise, you're only making about 10 horsepower more than I am, really, so negligible, right? At best with the added weight of it, and it's just not really worth it. Unless you work over the motor completely, then it's worth doing. Yeah, oh, of course. I know you like your weird stuff. I like my weird stuff too. Like, and 3.8 Supercharged, really neat engine design, to be honest. And it's just, like, too bad. Like, you have to do a decent amount of work to them to actually make them really reliable. Because, or at least, because they like to blow their head gaskets, right? Just like a regular 3.8 that doesn't have boost. Like, I don't understand Ford's thinking with that, and that they didn't reinforce the motor hardly at all compared to a regular 3.8 to make it a supercharge. So it's kind of odd that they decided to do that. But, because you can obviously make those motors very reliable, but it's head gaskets, head studs, all that different stuff, right? That you have to do with basically any engine that's prone to blowing head gaskets. It's no different than a Mitsubishi 2.2 turbo from the 80s. They are the same way. Because, like, fantastic platform to build off of. You just need to do some work to get them to where you can build off of it. Yeah, see, exactly. See, and that's the way to do it, right? Because there's so many people that are just like, oh, hey, I can just take this engine and roll with it as it is, and I'm like, well, if you never go full throttle, sure, maybe. But we're car enthusiasts. We're gonna go full throttle as often as we can. Even like with like, it's interesting because people have mentioned to me, like, if I wanted to get rid of my axle hop, that I could just go to a stiffer shock and, like, say a Bilstein or something like that. Which, yes, it would actually do the trick, but it's not worth it to me right now because it's only in the wintertime, and I don't really care about my winter tires in with axle hop, you know. So yeah, because I tried to do a speed run the other day, and just with the axle hop and everything, it was just numbers were terrible. See what I mean? And now I'm trying to think actually, regular so turbo coupe shocks, because they were. I'm trying to actually think. No, they weren't Bilsteins, were they? I'm trying to remember. Because I know obviously they weren't your stock sort of Ford ones or Monroes or anything like that. But I'm trying to remember. I thought they were a different brand, but I could be wrong. Again, I'm trying to remember. It's been a minute since I looked up stuff for a turbo coupe because I like turbo coupes, especially the early turbo coupes. Like with that, you get a turbo coupe from like 84, 85. Oh, they're so good looking. I love those cars so much. Like there was a guy. Now this one happened to be a 5 liter car with a stick. It was a not Dale Earnhardt, not Richard Petty. One of those editions, anyways. So it had this really cool body kit on it, basically, and just some stitching on the seats and whatever else. I just love the way it looked. It was for sale for the longest time, and it was only at like $2,000, but just nobody wanted it. And he dropped it in price. Bill Elliott, that's the one. Yes, see, there we go. Couldn't think of the name. Yeah, the Bill Elliott edition. It was a bit of a beater, and it was red, and because they were all red, but pretty rare car actually, and but just nobody wanted this thing. And then it sat and sat and sat forever on Marketplace and on Kijiji. And finally it got sold, and then somebody did a decent amount of work to it to get it to be a nicer car. It still has the patina on it, but then they had it up for like $5,000, and it actually went quite quickly at that price because they basically rebuilt the car and just made it a lot nicer of a car because it needed quite a bit of work apparently. So, and stuff like that. I like to see that sort of stuff. Like I like to see that kind of weird sort of stuff, especially from the 80s, because I like my 60s cars, I like my 70s cars, but I don't know, I think I grasp onto the 80s cars the most, which I don't get why, because the 80s performance was starting to come back. Don't get me wrong, but it still wasn't where they were in the 60s for performance, and styling wise, for the most part, wasn't as cool as they were in the 60s. So I don't know why I grasp onto those, but I do. Because especially with the Fox bodies, they were a car designed in the 70s, but they ran into the 90s. So, and I prefer the 80s styling because even though the Aero Fox bodies, as an example, it's an 80s car, or at least designed in the 80s, I like the earlier ones that were designed in the 70s. So, and that's true, they do. Like, I know that even as an example, and now something actually, I have not talked about this on the channel yet, but so if you remember last summer, I think it was, or maybe the summer before that, I can't even remember. Anyways, so I was at, no, it was the summer before that, yeah. I was at a car show in Olds, and there was a Cosworth Vega that drove by in the video, and it was about an 8-second clip of the video that I did with a full walk around of every car. And it's kind of funny because I was filming this Model T with a 350 in it, and then I see this, I pan away from it, go, holy crap, that's a Cosworth Vega, and I set it at quite volume because I'm like, I've never seen one of those, and that's just so neat to me, right? Didn't really know much about them. I just knew that they existed at the time, and then I learned a bit more about them afterwards. And then a few months later, I find it for sale on Kijiji, and I ask, "Hey, can I film your car?" And guy says, "Sure." His name happens to be Paul. He's a friend of mine now. But I filmed that car, and it was great. And then he let me drive it that day. So stupid that I did not film myself driving that car. A regret, but it is what it is. You know, And yeah, so there will actually be a proper review of that car in the coming weeks. You know, when he gets the thing back together, because he has a TikTok channel and he has been dealing with the manual transmission in that car giving him problems. It's the Chevrolet T50 transmission, which they used in the 70s in Vegas and Monzas mostly. So he has one actually from a Monza that happens to be a bit beefier because it's for a 305 car. Or he said potentially 267 as well. So either or. Um, it's just a little beefier than the one that he has for the original one, which is for his little 2.3 liter dual overhead cam, making 110 horsepower. But it's so weird because like you'd think 110 horsepower and like 100 and I think it's like 114 foot-pounds of torque. You'd think that would be just fine under any gearbox, but no, for some reason those gearbox had their problems. And so yeah, he's rebuilt the transmission. He put all the needle bearings and stuff like that in it, and and he's gonna stab that V8 one in the car. And then once that happens, like, because I challenged him on TikTok as well to a drag race, because oddly enough, we're very close in specs. So I weigh a little more than he does. I'm about 150 pounds heavier, give or take, than he is in his car. But I'm pretty sure, more horsepower, more torque than he does. I definitely have more torque. Horsepower, I think so at this point. He has better gearing with the 373s, but I have a limited slip with 355s. So, could be a pretty close race. And I mean, who wouldn't want to tune into that? Drag race between a Cosworth Vega and an inline six Mustang. Weird draws in people. That's just what it does, right? So, and we'll see which car is faster. Because his is bone stock. Mine's obviously modified quite a bit. But, yeah, like, because driving that car, I'm not going to lie, that is the most fun I've ever had in a car. And because those things never came with power steering or power brakes. Oh, it'll 100% be videoed. Because what I'm going to do when that happens is, so I'm going to ask him to put a phone on his windshield and then put a phone on my windshield. And I do want to actually get another mount and another phone and put it to view, because you saw my video of me, like two videos of me driving the manual for the first time and then showing people how to drive a manual. I'm sure you've seen both of those. You'll smoke me with that. Because even like when I'm done with my car, like done, I don't even know if I'll hit 300 horsepower, to be honest. And see, and I figured you have. So, that camera view that I had in those two videos, I love that camera view, and especially for like racing, that's a perfect camera angle, right? So, I'd have that one, and then doing that, and then I would have the one on the dash going out the windshield, right? And then now, don't get me wrong, I'd love to do the same thing in his car. It's just, I don't know if, like, I would need more mounts, because I only have 2 currently. I need to get more of those mounts, and I'd also have to find more devices to film with, right? Because you could do a similar thing in his car of that view of showing, the shifting and everything, and he's fine being on camera, so, that'd be really, really neat. And then I'd probably have, hopefully, another camera set up at whatever we figure out our finish line is going to be, to film that, at the finish line. So, it'd be really, really neat, and, like, I'd love to have, like a third person there with just a camera on a tripod, which, who knows, maybe I can employ Joseph for that. Because he has actually new film equipment, too, and we could also use his phone, potentially, for stuff, too. And then, he could have, like, a teaser on his channel to tease my channel, and, it'd be a really neat sort of collaboration that way. See, no, that's something that we could potentially do. Like, although the one thing is, because without like racing on the street, I mean, we'd probably end up doing this on a desolate road somewhere. But if we try to do it at the track, there's only one track that actually has a quarter-mile drag strip here in Alberta, which happens to be in Edmonton. So, um, you know, and it used to be called Castrol Raceway, but last summer, I guess Castrol, the licensing expired for them to use Castrol. And so for all of my life, it's been Castrol Raceway, and it's now Rad Torque Raceway. So, dumb name. Castrol was better. But it is what it is. I've not actually been to that drag strip yet. I want to. Because we could do, because me and him could go out and do 8th Mile at Rimby whenever they have their open sort of track days. For sure. And, because we could see which one's faster in 8th Mile. We could have the time slips and everything, and, it would be very, very cool. And yeah. See, now, because, I'd be curious to see how fast Stitch actually is now. Because before, I've never actually topped that car out yet. Nowhere near topping it out. And I hit, it was 180 kilometers an hour, which is fairly quick, but it's not quite, because I'm trying to think, what is that in miles? I want to say it's like 120 mile an hour, maybe 130, but yeah, that is 120. Okay, that's what I thought. So that's where I've been at in that car so far. Lilo, I have no idea because I haven't quite taken her up to speed very much. I've gotten to 100 mile an hour though in that car. And Lilo is much more stable than Stitch is. Stitch is a lot more twitchy. So, but yeah, it's one of those things. Like I would love to do stuff like that, and something I want to do, and because there's a place called Ghost Lake, Alberta, and they do something really really cool there, where they have racetracks built on the frozen lake, right in the wintertime. And you can go there, it's free of charge. You can go there whenever you want. They only ask that you're respectful of the land, whatever, which of course, don't leave your garbage, all that different stuff. And now the one thing is with that, because I was trying to explain to my buddy Keith of how you prep your car to do that. You drill a ton of screws into the tires so you can get traction. That's it. That's all you do. And then you send it. It's like, but wouldn't that leak? I'm going, no, actually it doesn't. Because you have the screw going the other way. Because he's thinking, well, like, would you have a tube on it? Going, no, you don't. You just drill right through the tire. Then you put it back on the bead and bam, you're good. Right? And you don't even need to worry about balancing it because it'd be really hard to balance it with all those freaking spikes on it. So, which are really just screws, right? So, that's something I really want to do. And we'll see if I'm able to do that this year. Maybe that's a next year thing. I don't know. Because again, money is just super tight right now for anything. But yeah, because it'd be really fun, and the weather we're having lately, it's been so nice. So to actually go out there would be fantastic. And like the ice is still thick enough to go racing there, so that's not a big deal. Um, and yeah, and then filming that whole thing, and seeing, yeah, how well can I, slide a car around a track. Hmm. See, you could do it that way as well. Like, it's not drag strips though. This is twisty. So like proper circuit tracks made into the ice. And I've always wanted to ice race, but I just never have. So, and you know, like, because if I went out, obviously, like how I am right now, obviously that is not going to grip worth for crap, and I'd be so slow, and I'd probably spin out, and all that stuff, right? So I don't want that to happen. So, yeah. Because I know, like, some people go out there and they don't have the screws in their tires, and they're fine, but most of those are modern cars with traction control, which helps them out a little bit, and all-wheel drive, which helps them out a bit, too. I have nothing. I don't even have all-wheel drive. I'm rear-wheel drive, like a real car. Joking, obviously. I like my all-wheel drive cars, too. But, because a car that would actually be fun to do that in is actually my dad's Magnum. Because of it being the all-wheel drive with the power and the response it has, because it doesn't have a ton of power. But 250 horsepower, 250 foot-pounds of torque, and an all-wheel drive system that's very snappy, it would be really fun, you know? But I still like my analog in my cars. And basically, like, if I was using it, like, if I ever went with his car, I would definitely have to take all of the, pull the fuse out so that the traction control doesn't kick in, nor does the ABS. Because you don't want any of that when you're on ice, And just one of those deals. And that's why, like, when I went out, and did my, like, not this past Monday, but the Monday before. Yeah, and see, and it would be a neat idea to make an all-wheel drive Fox body, but it's not in the cards right now. It's just not. And yeah, like, you can do it with an Aerostar. You could do it with few different things. Like, it's interesting because me and my dad, like, when I showed him Greg's Lincoln Mark V pickup truck, the wheels in his head just started turning. He was like, okay, how cool would this be? And, like, he thought about, because it's a 79 Lincoln Mark V with a 400. He thought about taking that 400 out and putting, like, a 3.5 EcoBoost in there, and, like, making it all-wheel drive, and, stuff like that. And, like, how cool would it be? And that configuration, I'm going, it actually would be fairly good. It would have more power, better efficiency than the 400, and, and yeah, you'd have all-wheel drive, which is just badass, and a rig like that. But, I don't know. Like, that's something that would be kind of neat to make a big boat like that actually fast. I've always wanted to do that. I always wanted to build out a boat like that, which there's still a friend of mine. I mean, there would be a ton of customization. Absolutely. But it'd be really cool, though, right? And, like, you wouldn't, like, if you saw something like that at a car show and, it happens to be all-wheel drive and with an EcoBoost in it, you go, that's freaking badass, right? So, yeah, it's just one of those things that, we just kind of were just thinking about shit with that thing if we owned it. But, like, something, because it's still for sale. I can still buy it if I had the money, but I don't. Because a perfect platform to kind of build up and be a really cool sort of rig happens to be, so a friend of mine, if you remember my barn find adventure, that Lincoln Mark IV is still in that barn. And I can buy it for $800 or best offer. So, I could probably get away with, buy it for like 6 or even 7. And if I had the cash, I would do it in a heartbeat. That's such a cool car. I like Lincoln Mark IVs. I like Mark IIIs better, but Mark IVs are cool. Like I said, if I had the money, I would do it, but I don't. I'm broke. Now, something that might happen because, and I just gotta, like, basically, I'm waiting for a phone call from Keith because I need to talk to him about a couple things, because who knows? That's something that could maybe happen. But basically, if I bought it right now, it would be a flip. I'd fix it and flip it. Oh, actually, I've got to. My dad actually needs some help with some stuff because he just came back in. So I'm gonna let you all go. Thank you all so much for watching, and stay tuned for my center console stuff. So, anyways, bye.